Congratulations, you've just been hired to teach at a new school. This is definitely an exciting time, but I'm sure that there are a lot of things that are on your mind that you need to plan for and prepare before that first day of school. But where do you start? In this video, I'm sharing 6 essential questions that you must ask and seek out answers to the moment you accept the job, shake hands, and sign that contract. Taking care of these 6 areas will definitely make you feel more prepared to greet those students as they walk in your door. And of course, one thing that you're always prepared for is hitting that like and subscribe button so that you won't miss out on any tips on how to make teaching easier, because really, do you want to miss out on that? Really? And be sure to stay until the end for the bonus tip that you definitely want to keep in the back of your mind until you meet your colleagues. Now, these tips are in order of importance just because it makes sense to start out with the first one, which is to find out who are the support staff. So this includes the principal secretary, who is going to become your new best friend, the attendance people, the people that sit at the front office that greet parents, counselors, definitely custodians, and any other support staff that anyone else feels is important for you to know. A lot of times, these staff are definitely underappreciated because they work in the office and they're not teachers or administrators, but they definitely make the school run and make the school run smoothly. At this point, I have taught at 4 different schools, and in each school, I made a point of getting to know and kind of buttering up and kissing up to the principal secretary, because they're going to be the ones who have the most information. They know exactly what's going on. They know the principal's schedule. They know what you need to know so that you can be successful at the school. And whenever you have just these little questions like, how do I do this? How do I put in a purchase order? Things like that, they're going to be the person that you want to definitely go to. Now, even if you're not super nice to the principal secretary, they're not going to retaliate against you. But if you want them to help you in a timely manner, or maybe your emergency is your emergency and you want it to be their emergency, they're more likely to help you if you are genuinely nice to them. But if you're demanding at all, or if you come off as above them, just be prepared for a rough time. The same thing goes with the custodians. They are greatly underappreciated considering what they do and also what they know about the school. So if a student throws up in your classroom, or if you need something moved, or there's like some huge bug or infestation and you want them to take care of it in a timely manner, then you definitely want to be nice to your custodians. And especially if you have one that's assigned to your area, you might want to think about being extra nice to them and knowing them on a first name basis. So the next question that you need to answer is, what is your teaching assignment? So this includes, what grade are you teaching? What subjects are you responsible for teaching? Because even at the elementary, especially as you get into the higher grades in elementary, sometimes you're a specialist and somebody else takes care of other subjects. So exactly what are you responsible to teach? Do you have a planning period? And if so, when is that? And also, do you have any supervision requirements or duties? So maybe on certain weeks or certain days you have lunch supervision, or maybe recess supervision, or nutrition break supervision, something like that. So definitely find out what is your teaching assignment and fully find out what that entails. This could also be asking, do you have to teach with a co-teacher? And if so, who is that co-teacher? Or do you have students with IEPs in your classroom, and what kind of supports are they getting from the school versus what you're supposed to provide? Also, you can find out if you can take a look at those IEPs ahead of time so that you can kind of get a sense of what to expect in your classroom. The next question that you want to answer is, where's your classroom? So you definitely want to start planning out how you're going to lay out your classroom. Every teacher is different unless there's a certain requirement by your school, but pretty much you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how your classroom is laid out, and you want to plan that ahead of time. I'm sure you're also really excited to plan out decorations or posters or educational materials that you're going to be putting on the walls. Of course, I don't recommend spending too much money on this. I would also try to find out if maybe the previous teacher left any materials, or you could also wait and see until the school year starts to see if any other teachers have materials that they're not using anymore, and you can use those if you're coming from absolutely nothing. New teachers sometimes spend way too much money on decorating their classroom in the beginning of the school year when they don't really have that much money, or maybe you don't even have your first paycheck yet. So I would kind of hold off on that and see what kind of free materials you can use at first, and then you can start investing in your own later on. Something else really important in terms of your classroom is also finding out where the nearest staff bathroom is. A lot of times you only have mere minutes to run there and use it between classes or during a break, so definitely find out the best route to the closest staff bathroom to your classroom. The fourth essential question to ask is, what are your bell schedules and school calendar? So this is definitely important because even if you teach at the elementary school level, there's a certain time when you are with your students, a certain time for recess and lunch and things like that. It definitely becomes important when you are in the upper grades, when students have multiple classes and you want to know how long are your class periods. Do you have just 1 hour periods that you meet every day? Are you on what they call a block schedule, where on certain days you see periods 1, 2, 3, and other days 4, 5, 6, something like that. Find out what the bell schedule is, especially in days like minimum days or just altered schedule days. Also, find out what the school calendar is so that you know the start and end dates. You can start planning out when your breaks are going to be, and in the back of your mind, figure out what you want to do on those breaks, and also the end of grading period so that you can plan for when you have to turn in your grades for report cards. I especially like to know any required activities that I have to attend, such as open house or parent conferences or testing or anything like that. I also like to know if there's any school mandated professional development that I have to go to, especially as a new teacher at my school or district, or just a new teacher in general, so that I can plan accordingly. Sometimes you can find these schedules on your school's website, but it wouldn't hurt to also ask your principal's secretary if they have a copy of it that they can give you right away. The next essential question that you want to ask when you accept that new teaching job is, what technology are you required to use? So this has become really important ever since the pandemic, when more schools have adopted using technology more in their teaching. So you may have actually learned how to use one type of gradebook or learning management system, and now at this new school, everyone's required to use something else. So it's really important to find out what that is ahead of time. If you're lucky, it's one that you've already played with, like maybe that school uses Google Classroom and you played with that before, but it might be something completely new, and it will be easier for you if you take some time before the first day of school to play around with it so that you can get to know it, and that'll be one less thing on your plate once the school year starts rolling. I'd also find out how soon you can get a school email address, because in some districts like mine, that could take months before you can even get staff emails sent to you. I'd also find out if your school has assigned you a computer. So maybe you have a computer that's just for school, and maybe they have a computer for you that you can use at home. Every district is different. At my school, they offer us Lenovo laptops, so you can use it at school and at home if you want. And of course, I definitely find out if students have access to technology. So if you're like in my district, where students either have an iPad or a laptop assigned to them, then you definitely want to know that so that you can plan your lessons accordingly. And while you're at it, you can also ask what technology subscriptions your school has paid for. So maybe they've paid for something like Pear Deck or Nearpod or Scholastic Scope or something like that. So then you can start planning on how to use those in your lessons. And finally, the last question that you want to ask as soon as you accept that job is, when can you get teacher copies of the curriculum? So this is important because you want to know what you're going to be required to teach. I mean, obviously, if you're teaching science, there's a science textbook, and you want to get your hands on that because you're probably required to use it. Same goes with all of the other subjects. And so getting your hands on the teacher edition and even the student edition actually can be really helpful so that you know what it looks like when the students are looking at it. Do they have physical textbooks? Do they have online textbooks? Do they have to take home a copy? You can find out the answers to these questions, of course, with your front office secretary, but you can also ask the librarian if they're there over the summer, or if it's in the middle of the year, you can just go ahead and inquire directly. And if you're a new teacher, this is especially helpful because if there is a set curriculum with activities and worksheets and things like that, you don't have to try to come up with everything on your own. You can just use what's already there and just hit the ground running on the first week of school. Of course, when you meet your department or your PLC, probably the first week back of school, you can ask them more specifics about which particular lessons and materials that they use and have found successful, but at least you'll have some frame of reference for when you start out the school year. Now, the bonus tip is to find out what is the evaluation process at your school. So I wouldn't necessarily ask this right off the bat, because with your principal secretary or any of the front office staff, you've already asked them a lot of questions. But when the other teachers do come back to school and you're in meetings with them, maybe having lunch with them, or they're setting up their classroom and you stop by to introduce introduce yourself, I would definitely ask about the evaluation process so that you can be prepared. Keep that in the back of your mind so that as your administrator comes to visit and observe you, you know what you should be showing them so that you can get a positive evaluation. Of course, you want to collect this information from multiple sources because everyone has a different experience when it comes to evaluations. I know of teachers who constantly get negative evaluations and yet they're still there, but they're always on edge in terms of whether or not they're going to be let go. And then there are other times when administrators barely seem to pay attention or care about evaluations and they just let teachers slide either way. So you want to find out by collecting anecdotes from different people about what the evaluation process was like for them, and that way you can be fully prepared. So these 6 questions will definitely make you feel more prepared and definitely ready for whatever awaits you this coming school year. Now, one thing that can be kind of hard to anticipate and prepare for is classroom management in terms of bad student behavior. So if that's something that you struggle with and want more help with, be sure to click on this video next, where I talk about different ways that you can prepare for any kind of student behavior that comes up in your classroom.